The silence inside the SUV was louder than any scream. Even with the rain hammering against the windows, I could still hear my son's voice, cold, sharp, final. "If you won't do what I want, then get out. I'm done." Then, slam. The car door closed, the tires screeched, and the headlights disappeared into the storm. And just like that, I was alone. At 62 years old, standing on a desolate Colorado road with no phone, no money, and no family, I realized something inside me had just died. My name is Mary, and until that night, I thought I'd raised a good man. Robert, my brilliant lawyer's son, Christine, her elegant wife. I had given them everything, my savings, my house, my trust. 6 months ago, after a mild stroke, they moved me into their luxury condo in New York. I thought I was lucky, but it didn't take long before I heard Christine whisper to Robert about the burden I'd become, the cost of my medicine, the space I took up, the inconvenience of my existence. That afternoon, they said we were going for a drive. For hours, we drove in silence. I was confused but grateful, until the conversation turned to my will. "Mom," said Robert, his tone shifting, "you should leave everything to me. Jessica doesn't need it." Jessica, my niece, the one who had always cared for me when no one else did. When I refused, his face hardened. "You're being ungrateful." The car stopped suddenly. Christine didn't even look back. She said, "Get out." I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Robert opened the door, pulled me out by the arm, and shoved me into the mud. "If you won't change the wind, you can stay here." I begged. I cried. But the car sped away, my son's taillights vanishing into the rain. I sat there, trembling, my clothes soaked, my heart shattered. Then, faintly through the storm, I heard something. The soft hum of electric wheels gliding over the wet pavement. Was it Robert coming back? No. From the fog emerged a woman, older, elegant, sitting in a wheelchair under a clear raincoat. Behind her, a tall man held a huge umbrella. She looked at me with piercing eyes. "It was your son, wasn't it?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded. She reached out her hand. "Come with me, dear. Pretend to be my daughter. Your son and daughter-in-law are going to regret this night." And that was how a stranger appeared in my darkest hour and changed my life forever. But who was this mysterious woman, and how did she already know my name? Her hand was steady, cold, but strong. "Come, dear," the woman said again, her voice cutting through the thunder like a calm note in chaos. "You don't want to stay here." Behind her stood a tall man, silent and serious, holding a huge black umbrella that sheltered her from the downpour. "This is George," she added softly. "He'll help you." I hesitated, soaked, trembling, heartbroken. Everything in me screamed not to trust strangers. But what choice could I have? My son had just abandoned me. My life, my dignity, my hope, gone. When George reached for my hand, I took it. His grip was warm, grounding, safe. "Let's get you out of the rain," he said gently. He guided me toward a sleek black car parked on the roadside. Through the storm, it looked like a shadow waiting to swallow me. I glanced back once more at the empty road. Nothing. No headlights. No sign of Robert. Just darkness and betrayal. Inside the car, the heat wrapped around me like a lifeline. A soft blanket covered my shaking knees while the mysterious woman studied me in silence. Her eyes, they weren't just kind, they were knowing. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. To my home, she said simply. You'll be safe there. Safe. I wasn't sure I even remembered what that word meant. As the car glided down the winding road, I stared out the window. My reflection looked like a ghost, pale, hollow, frightened. Why are you helping me? I asked, my voice cracking. Her gaze didn't leave the rain-soaked glass. Because I know what it's like to be left behind by the people who should have loved you most. Those words hit harder than the storm outside. The drive lasted maybe 30 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Then, through the mist, I saw it. A massive wrought iron gate opening slowly before us. Beyond it stood a mansion straight out of a dream or maybe a nightmare. Columns, windows glowing with warm light, a driveway lined with rose bushes shining with rain. The kind of place that whispered power. George parked under an archway and hurried out to unfold the ramp for her wheelchair. She rolled down gracefully, barely glancing at the rain. Come along, Mary. Let's get you dry. Inside, the air smelled faintly of roses and old wood. Marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. A woman appeared at the staircase, clearly expecting us. Carla, prepare the blue room, a hot bath, warm clothes. Yes, Mrs. Riley, the woman replied, disappearing up the stairs. Mrs. Riley. So that was her name. She turned back to me with a faint smile. You're safe now, Mary. Everything here is yours for as long as you need. Safe. Again, that word. But as Carla guided me upstairs, I couldn't shake the chill crawling down my spine. How did this woman, this Eleanor Riley, already know my name? Upstairs, the blue room looked like something from a fairy tale. Soft blue walls, silk pajamas folded neatly, and a steaming bath waiting. Almost like someone had been expecting me. And as I sank into the warmth of that bath, one thought echoed louder than the thunder outside. This wasn't kindness by accident. When I went downstairs to thank her, I found Mrs. Riley waiting by the fire, and what she revealed next would make me question everything. When I came back downstairs, the mansion felt different, too quiet, too aware. The rain had stopped, but thunder still rumbled far away, echoing through the marble halls. The air smelled of smoke and something faintly sweet. Chamomile, maybe. Mrs. Riley sat by the grand fireplace, her wheelchair angled so that the flames reflected in her eyes. For a moment, she looked almost otherworldly, calm, powerful, and terrifyingly sure of herself. Sit, Mary, she said softly, motioning to the armchair across from her. You must be exhausted. I obeyed, though my hands trembled. Thank you, I murmured. I don't understand why you're helping me. She smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was the kind that hides a secret. Because I've been where you are, alone, betrayed, left to freeze by the people who were supposed to love me. Her voice was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that only comes from pain so deep it no longer bleeds. You've been abandoned too? I asked. She nodded slowly. Yes. And when that happened, I decided never again would I let others suffer that fate without a fight. Carla entered silently, setting down a tray with tea and small butter cookies. Everything about the house felt perfectly orchestrated. as if every word, every gesture, every sound was part of a plan I couldn't yet see. I sipped the tea, trying to hide my unease. "You said you know about my son," I said quietly. "How?" Her eyes met mine, sharp as a blade. "I know much more than you think, Mary. About Robert, about Christine, about the house you gave them, even about your niece Jessica, the one your son wants to cut out of your will." The cup nearly slipped from my hands. "How could you—" She interrupted smoothly. "I have my ways. And I assure you, your son and his wife will soon learn that every choice has consequences." I swallowed hard. "I don't want revenge," I whispered. "No?" She leaned closer, her tone almost tender. "Then what do you want? Justice? Understanding? Or maybe redemption?" The fire crackled between us. For a moment, the only sound was the steady hum of the wood devouring itself. "You're safe here. Tomorrow you'll start to understand who I am and what I can do for you." I wanted to believe her, but something in her eyes told me that safety came with a price. That night, lying in the enormous bed of the blue room, I couldn't sleep. The images looped in my mind: Robert's face in the rain, the screech of tires, Eleanor's cryptic words about justice and revenge. Who was this woman really? A savior? Or something else entirely? I stared at the flickering shadows on the ceiling until dawn, my heartbeat refusing to slow down. Because, deep down, I already knew, the moment I stepped into her mansion, my life had stopped being my own. At sunrise, a single message would arrive that proved Eleanor Riley hadn't just rescued me, she had been watching me long before that night. I woke to sunlight filtering through lace curtains, soft and golden, almost kind enough to make me forget where I was. For a split second, I imagined I was back home, that the nightmare on the roadside had never happened. Then the scent of roses and polished wood reminded me this was Eleanor Riley's mansion, not my home, not my life. Someone had left fresh clothes folded neatly on a chair, my size, my style. Even the perfume dabbed on the fabric was mine. That chilled me more than the rain had. As I dressed, a knock sounded. Carla entered, smiling politely. "Mrs. Riley is waiting for you in the dining room," she said. "Breakfast is ready." I followed her down the long hallway, lined with paintings, faces of people I didn't recognize, all watching me with haunting eyes. Eleanor sat at the head of an elegant table, her wheelchair perfectly centered, as if she belonged to the house itself. George stood nearby, silent as always. "Good morning, Mary," she greeted. "Did you sleep?" "Barely," I admitted. "Good," she said with a small smile. "Rest is overrated when there's work to do." "Work?" The word made my stomach tighten. As I took my seat, Eleanor poured coffee herself. No servants, no hesitation, just precision. "Your identification and medical documents were in your son's car," she said casually. "I've replaced them." I froze mid-sip. "That's impossible." She smiled. "Money and connections make the impossible very easy." It wasn't bragging, it was fact. Cold, undeniable fact. Then she gestured to George, who handed me a tablet. On the screen was a text message sent from my own phone number. "Son, I caught a ride with a friend. I need time to think. Don't look for me." I stared at the words, my heart thudding. "But I don't have my phone."
I know, she replied smoothly. That message was sent from a new number, registered in your name. Robert will believe it's yours. She had planned everything. Why go through all this trouble? I asked. Why care what happens to me? Eleanor set down her cup, her eyes dark and unwavering. Because you're not the first, Mary. And until people like Robert learn that greed has consequences, you won't be the last. Her voice was calm, but her words burned. After breakfast, she invited me outside to walk in the gardens. George pushed her wheelchair while I walked beside them, still unsure whether I was a guest or a prisoner. The garden stretched endlessly, fountains, roses, marble statues, everything in perfect order. There's something you need to see, Eleanor said suddenly. She pressed a button on a small remote. A hidden panel opened in the gazebo floor, revealing a sleek digital screen. And on that screen, I saw Robert, my son, in his condo, pacing, arguing with Christine. There was no sound, but his face said it all. Anger, fear, guilt. They're fighting about you, Eleanor whispered. He's telling her you'd never go to the police, that you were too weak. I covered my mouth, tears flooding my eyes. Watching your own child dismiss you as worthless hurts more than any storm. Why show me this? I choked out. Because you need to understand, Eleanor replied, her voice suddenly sharp. They're not sorry, Mary. They're only afraid of losing everything. The screen flickered to another image, Robert in his study, on the phone, his expression cold, calculating. He's asking how long it takes for someone to be declared legally dead, Eleanor said flatly. My son wants to profit from my death? Eleanor's gaze hardened. Not death, perhaps, just your disappearance. And that, Mary, is why I found you. That night, Eleanor revealed her own past and the shocking truth about how she knew exactly what my son had done. The air in the garden felt heavier after what I'd just seen. My son, my own flesh and blood, plotting how to profit from my absence. I couldn't breathe. Eleanor sat quietly in her chair, her hands folded neatly in her lap, as if she'd been expecting my reaction all along. You needed to see it, she said softly. Now you understand the kind of people we're dealing with. I turned to her, voice shaking. Why do you care so much? Why go through all this for me? For a long moment, she said nothing. The wind rustled through the roses. Somewhere in the distance, thunder grumbled again. Then she spoke. Because, Mary, 20 years ago, I was you. She told me her story in that calm, deliberate tone that only the truly strong possess. Once, Eleanor Riley had been a respected judge. She had power, wealth, a beautiful home, and one son, Ethan. He was my pride, she said, eyes glistening in the morning light. And then I had an accident, a drunk driver. One moment of bad luck, and I was left paralyzed from the waist down. Her son and his wife had taken her in at first. They said they wanted to help, but soon came the complaints, the looks, the whispered resentment, exactly like your Robert and Christine. I felt goosebumps rise along my arms. One night, she continued, after another argument about money, Ethan drove me out into the hills. He stopped the car, left me there, alone in my chair in the freezing dark. She took a slow breath, steady but haunted. That night, Mary, I swore I would never be powerless again. Her eyes locked on mine, fierce, unblinking. I used everything I had, my knowledge of the law, my influence, my money. I ruined them, Ethan lost everything. His wife left him. He went to prison for fraud. And when he came out, he was a broken man. The way she said it chilled me. There was no pride, but no regret either, only a cold certainty. "You destroyed your own son," I whispered. "He destroyed himself the moment he left me to die," she replied simply. "I just made sure justice finished what cruelty began." I didn't know what to say. Was this woman my savior or a warning? Eleanor leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Now tell me, Mary, do you want them punished, or do you want to walk away and pretend it never happened?" My heart pounded. I wanted to scream that I didn't want revenge, but the image of Robert on that screen, coldly discussing my death, silenced me. I need time to think," I whispered. Eleanor nodded once. "Think carefully, because whatever you choose next, there's no turning back." That night, I couldn't sleep, and by morning, I would discover that Eleanor had already set her plan in motion, with or without my permission.
That night, I couldn't rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Robert's face on the screen. Calm, cold, almost relieved that I was gone. I wanted to believe Eleanor was exaggerating, but deep down, I knew she wasn't. The mansion was silent except for the distant tick of a grandfather clock. Its rhythm felt like a countdown. To what? I didn't know yet. At dawn, Carla brought me coffee. "Mrs. Riley would like to see you in the library." The library. I hadn't been there yet. When I entered, my breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling books, heavy curtains, sunlight spilling through stained glass. Eleanor sat near a desk covered in papers and folders. Beside her stood a woman I'd never seen before. Tall, neat, with the air of someone used to being obeyed. "Mary," Eleanor said, "this is Sophia Davis, my attorney." The woman nodded politely. "Good morning, Mrs. Almond. We have a few matters to discuss." She opened a folder, speaking in the precise rhythm of a lawyer delivering a verdict. "Option 1, we secure your finances and independence. Robert will no longer have legal control over anything you own. Option 2, we press charges, abandonment of a vulnerable adult. That could mean prison. Option 3, her voice lowered, we use our resources to make them lose everything without touching the courts." I frowned. "How?" Sophia glanced at Eleanor before answering. "By exposing weaknesses in their businesses, a few well-placed revelations, some anonymous tips. Their downfall will look natural." "Natural?" I repeated softly. It sounded too much like manipulation. "That's illegal." Eleanor interjected, her tone cool. "Only if you get caught, and we don't." My stomach twisted. I looked at the folder, at all the signatures, the plans already half written. "You've already started, haven't you?" Eleanor smiled faintly. "A good plan never waits for permission." I stood up, heart pounding. "You can't make that choice for me." She replied calmly, "I'm not. I'm making sure you have a choice, because your son already made his." Her words landed like thunder. For the rest of the day, I wandered the halls, haunted by memories of Robert's first day at school, his graduation, his wedding. When had love turned into greed? When had my son stopped seeing me as his mother
and started seeing me as a problem to solve. By evening, I found Eleanor in the rose garden. She was watching the sunset, the light painting her face in gold and shadow. "Have you decided?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "Not yet. I don't want revenge, but I can't pretend nothing happened." She nodded once. "Then you're ready. Because justice isn't about hate. It's about balance, Mary." Her voice was calm, but in her eyes burned something fierce. Something that told me the balance she spoke of would come with a price. The next morning, Eleanor led me to a secret room beneath the mansion where I would learn that her idea of justice was far darker than I had ever imagined. Morning light spilled through the hallway windows when Eleanor motioned for me to follow. She didn't say a word. Her wheelchair glided silently over the marble floor as George walked behind her, carrying a small metal key. We stopped in front of a painting, a portrait of a young woman in a crimson dress. Eleanor nodded at George. He slid the painting aside, revealing a steel door embedded in the wall. My pulse quickened. "What is this?" I asked. "The truth," she said simply. The lock clicked, the door swung open, and a hidden elevator came into view. It descended slowly, humming like a machine that hadn't forgotten its purpose. When the doors opened, cold air hit my face, sharp, dry, and faintly metallic. The basement wasn't what I expected. No dust, no cobwebs. Instead, computer screens, file cabinets, surveillance equipment. I stared in disbelief. "What is this place?" Eleanor's voice echoed softly. "My archive. Every case of betrayal I've documented, every victim I've helped, every criminal who thought they'd gotten away." On the screens, dozens of faces flickered. Families, lawyers, executives. Names flashed beneath them like digital confessions. Then I saw one I recognized. Robert Almond. My breath caught. "You're watching them." "She didn't watching," she corrected. "Studying, gathering proof before the rot spreads further." I moved closer to the monitor. It showed Robert leaving a law firm, talking on his phone. Christine followed, expression tense. Eleanor's reflection glowed in the screen beside mine. "He's already looking for your account details," she said. "He thinks he can access them with power of attorney." I felt dizzy. "He can't. He can," she interrupted quietly, "unless we act first." George handed me a folder. Inside were photos of Christine meeting another man at a cafe. "She's not as loyal as she pretends. That's her insurance policy. She'll turn on him the moment things get hard." It felt wrong to see it all laid bare, my son's life dissected, exposed like evidence in a courtroom. "Eleonora," I whispered, "this is spying." "This is protection," she said firmly. "If you won't defend yourself, I will." Her tone made it sound final. As she turned toward another monitor, I noticed something. A file labeled, "Eleanor, Personal Archive." For a second, her calm slipped. She reached out and turned off the screen. I caught a glimpse of an image. Not Robert, not Christine, a young man with familiar eyes. "Who is that?" I asked. Eleanor hesitated. "Someone I failed," she said quietly. And just like that, the door to her past closed again. When we rode the elevator back up, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about something she was trying to rewrite or hide. That night, I decided to find out who the man in that hidden file was, but what I discovered made me question whether I was her ally or her next project. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Every creak of the mansion made me jump. Every shadow looked like it hid a secret. But one thought kept circling in my head like a restless bird. Who was that man in the photo Eleanor tried to hide? By midnight, the house had gone silent. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake anyone. The corridors glowed faintly from the nightlights tucked into the baseboards. My bare feet whispered over the marble as I moved toward the library. The portrait door was still there, the young woman in red watching me with painted eyes. I slid it aside, pressed the elevator button, and held my breath as it carried me down. When the doors opened, the lights flickered to life automatically. The hum of machines filled the air. Rows of screens glowed in the dark like watchful eyes. I crossed to the console where I had seen the locked file. Eleanor, personal archive. I shouldn't. I knew that. But curiosity has a way of sounding like justice when you're desperate for truth. I typed the password I'd seen George use earlier, Lex Veritas. The file opened. On the screen appeared photos, old, grainy. A boy in his 20s smiling beside Eleanor's wheelchair. Same eyes, same jawline. Her son, Ethan. Then the pictures changed. Headlines. Judge's son found dead after parole scandal. Ethan Riley linked to missing charity funds. Mother declined comment. My stomach turned. Eleanor hadn't just lost her son to betrayal. She'd lost him completely. Suddenly, a voice behind me. You shouldn't be down here, Mary. I spun around. George stood in the doorway, his face calm, but his eyes sharp. I just needed answers, I said. She'll tell you when she's ready. Until then, stay out of this room. His tone wasn't angry, but it left no space for argument. Still, as he escorted me back upstairs, I caught sight of something on one of the monitors. A live feed from outside. Headlights. A car pulling up to the gate. Someone's here, I whispered. George frowned, glanced at his watch, and tapped his earpiece. No one was scheduled to arrive. He left me by the stairs and disappeared down the hall. From the landing, I peered through the glass doors leading to the driveway. A sleek black car idled beyond the gate. The driver leaned out the window, flashing a badge. Police. My heart started pounding again. Had Robert reported me missing? Were they here to take me home, or to make sure I disappeared for real this time? Down the hall, I heard Eleanor's voice, calm but firm. Let them in. I've been expecting them. Expecting them? The gates opened. The car rolled inside. And as two officers stepped out into the lantern light, I realized the look on Eleanor's face wasn't fear. It was satisfaction. One of those officers wasn't there for Eleanor at all. He was there for me. And what he said next shattered everything I thought I knew. The heavy front doors creaked open, and two officers stepped inside. Rain still dripped from their coats. One was young and quiet, eyes darting around the mansion in awe. The other, older, with deep lines and tired eyes, walked straight toward Eleanor. Mrs. Riley, he said, flashing his badge. Detective Marcus Hale, Boulder County Police. Eleanor's expression never changed. Detective Hale, she greeted smoothly. I was wondering when you'd show up. The way she said it, like she'd invited him, sent chills down my spine. I hovered in the background, unsure if I should speak, but then his eyes found me. They softened instantly. Mrs. Almond, he asked quietly. My mouth dried. Yes? He gave a small nod. We've been looking for you for 3 days. Your son filed a missing person report. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Now Robert cared enough to report me missing? Or was this just a way to cover himself? Before I could answer, Eleanor interjected. She's safe here. I found her on the side of the road after her son abandoned her. The detective's gaze shifted between us. Is that true, ma'am? I nodded slowly. He left me there, in the rain. Hell exhaled. That's serious. But before we go further, he glanced over his shoulder toward the young officer standing near the door. Give us a minute. The younger cop stepped outside. Hale lowered his voice. Mrs. Allman, do you trust this woman? The question caught me off guard. She saved my life. I think so. His eyes narrowed. Think so? He took out a small folded document from his jacket. A few years back, this house was part of an investigation. Multiple people stayed here after family disputes. Some of them vanished afterward. Others refused to talk. My pulse spiked. Vanished? He nodded. No foul play proven, but something's off. Every case somehow ended with Mrs. Riley taking legal control of her guests' assets for protection, according to her attorney. I stared at him stunned. That can't be true. She's helping me. Maybe, Hale said softly, or maybe you're just the next name in her collection. Behind us, the click of wheels echoed. Eleanor had rolled closer, her smile polite but icy. Detective Hale, if you have questions, you can direct them to my lawyer. He turned toward her, unfazed. I will, but if any harm comes to Mrs. Almond, I'll be back with a warrant. Eleanor's eyes didn't flinch. I'd expect nothing less. The tension in the air felt electric. When they finally left, I stood frozen in the grand hallway, the echo of their footsteps fading into silence. Eleanor turned to me, her voice calm but edged with steel. Detectives love to invent ghosts when they can't solve real crimes. I wanted to believe her, but the look in Hale's eyes carried something I couldn't shake, a warning. That night, I found it impossible to sleep. Because if what Hale said was true, had I escaped one trap, only to walk straight into another? The next morning, I discovered what had happened to one of Eleanor's previous guests, and it was a story so dark it made me question if I'd ever leave that mansion alive. The next morning started too quiet. No footsteps in the hall, no faint hum of Eleanor's wheelchair. Even the air felt heavy, like the mansion was holding its breath. I made my way downstairs. Carla was setting the table, her movements slower than usual. "Where's Mrs. Riley?" I asked. "She's resting," Carla murmured. "She had a long night." A long night doing what? I wondered. I picked up my coffee and wandered into the library. The faint smell of perfume lingered in the air, Eleanor's. On her desk sat a folder labeled Prior Cases. I hesitated, then curiosity won again. Inside were photos, faces of men and women, all smiling in the first image, broken in the last. Notes written in Eleanor's precise hand. Client abandoned by husband, estate recovered. Client lost custody, child returned. Client disappeared, case unresolved. I froze on that last page. A woman named Margaret Keene, 65 years old, no family left, disappeared 2 weeks after relocation. Disappeared. Before I could read more, a voice behind me made me jump. "Margaret was my first," Eleanor said quietly. I spun around. She sat in the doorway, wrapped in a pale robe looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "You scared me," I said, closing the folder. "She was like you," Eleanor continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "Her children sold her house and left her in a care facility. I took her in. I tried to help." Her eyes clouded. "But she couldn't let go of her past. She kept trying to go back, said she'd forgive them. I warned her, forgiveness can be a slow kind of death." I swallowed hard. "What happened to her?" Her lips parted, then closed again. She turned toward the window. "Some people can't handle freedom when they finally get it. They walk away from safety, straight back into the hands that hurt them." The way she said it sent chills down my spine. "You mean she left?" "I mean," Eleanor said slowly, "she chose her path." I stared at her, trying to read the truth in her face. "And you never saw her again?" A pause, then a faint smile. "No, but I know she found peace." The silence between us thickened. For the first time, I noticed how the light caught the silver cross around her neck. Simple, unassuming, but engraved with tiny initials. M.K. Margaret Keene. "That's her necklace," I whispered. Her expression didn't change. Some things are better remembered than returned. I felt my pulse in my throat. This woman, this savior who'd rescued me, was surrounded by ghosts. When I left the library, I realized something else. The hallway camera light was blinking, red, recording. Eleanor wasn't the only one watching. That night, someone slipped a note under my door. 6 words written in shaky handwriting. "You're not the first. Don't trust her."
The note lay half slid under my door, the paper damp, as though someone's hands had been shaking when they wrote it. 6 words. "You're not the first. Don't trust her." I read it again and again until the letters blurred. Was it a warning? A trick? I opened the door. The hallway was empty except for the faint hum of security cameras above. Their red lights blinked in slow rhythm, like a heartbeat. Someone had been out here, close enough to touch my door, and now they were gone. I hid the note under my pillow. Sleep was impossible after that. Every creak in the mansion sounded deliberate, like footsteps stopping just out of sight. When morning came, I found Carla arranging flowers in the parlor. She looked tired, paler than usual. "Rough night?" I asked. Her hand stilled on the vase. "This house has its noises," she said softly. "Best not to listen to them too closely." She wouldn't meet my eyes. That alone terrified me more than the note. At breakfast, Eleanor was her usual composed self, dressed perfectly, hair pinned in its silver coil. "You seem unsettled," she said, studying me. "Nightmares?" I hesitated. "Just restless." She smiled too knowingly. "Rest is a luxury. We'll have a busy day." A busy day. I didn't ask what she meant, but as George brought in folders and her lawyer appeared again by video call, I realized the plan was accelerating. Transfers, statements, documents that would legally remove Robert's access to everything with my name on it. Eleanor called it protection, but it felt like erasure. While they worked, I slipped away to the far end of the mansion, where a narrow door led to the servants' quarters. The air was colder there, the wallpaper peeling slightly, like a forgotten wing of the house. That's when I saw her. Carla, kneeling by a small shrine on the wall, a candle flickering before a faded photo. Margaret Keene. She turned when she heard me. "You knew her," I whispered. Carla nodded, eyes wet.
She begged me to help her leave, but Mrs. Riley found out. My stomach twisted. What happened? She shook her head quickly. Don't ask me that here. She blew out the candle, her hands trembling. Just don't let her decide for you. The sound of wheels echoed from down the hall. Eleanor's voice carried lightly. Mary, where did you wander off to? I slipped out before she reached the corridor. My heart was pounding, my palms slick. Eleanor appeared at the far end, calm as ever, her shadow stretching toward me. Be careful, dear, she said, smiling. Some doors in this house lead to places you don't want to see. Her tone was soft, but underneath it, I heard a warning. Or a threat? That night, I hid the note in my shoe, certain she searched my room when I slept. Because if Margaret Keene had really found peace, I had a horrible feeling I knew how. I decided to escape the next morning, but before I could run, Eleanor showed me something that made leaving impossible.
I woke before sunrise, the mansion still asleep. The plan was simple. Grab the spare keys from the pantry, find the back road I had seen from the upstairs window, and keep walking until I reached the main highway. But nothing about Eleanor's world stayed simple for long. As I crept through the corridor, I caught sight of her silhouette in the atrium, already awake, staring out into the rose garden. Her wheelchair stood still, the morning light turning the glass around her to pale gold. She didn't turn when she spoke. Running away before breakfast, dear? My stomach dropped. I just needed air, I stammered. Eleanor finally turned, her expression unreadable. Air is always available here. Freedom, however, must be earned. Her tone was calm, but her words felt like a lock clicking shut. She gestured toward the garden. Come with me. I have something to show you. George appeared, always silently, and pushed her through the wide glass doors. I followed, half afraid, half hypnotized. Outside, the roses glittered with dew, their scent heavy and sweet. But beyond the manicured bed stood a tall iron gate I hadn't noticed before. Thick vines wrapped around it like chains. Eleanor stopped in front of it and nodded to George. He produced a key from his pocket and unlocked it. After Margaret left, Eleanor said, I planted this garden in her honor, a reminder that some things bloom only after they've been cut down. The gate creaked open. Inside was a smaller courtyard, quiet, shaded, beautiful in a haunting way. In the center stood a marble bench with two names engraved in delicate script. Ethan Riley, Margaret Keene. My chest tightened. You buried them here? Eleanor's eyes glistened. I buried their pain. The rest is between them and God. Her calmness terrified me more than anger ever could. Eleanor, I whispered, what happened to Margaret? She looked away, her fingers brushing the carved letters. She wanted to leave. I warned her she wasn't ready. The world outside these gates is cruel, Mary. It eats the weak. I kept her safe. Safe. The word no longer sounded like comfort. It sounded like control. Safe from what? I asked. From herself, she said simply. From the people who would hurt her again. From choices that destroy. A chill ran through me. She believed every word. And me? I asked quietly. Am I safe too? Eleanor turned back toward the mansion, the sunlight catching the silver cross at her throat. That depends on whether you still want to leave. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the distant call of a crow somewhere beyond the walls. Then she smiled, gentle, almost motherly. Come, dear, breakfast is waiting. As we returned to the house, I glanced back at the gate. George was locking it again. The key disappeared into his pocket.
I realized then that Eleanor's garden wasn't just a memorial, it was a boundary. And now, I was on the wrong side of it. That evening, a stranger slipped through that same gate, and the secret he carried would finally expose what Eleanor Riley had been hiding all along. Dusk bled across the sky like spilled ink when I heard it, metal scraping against metal. From my window, I saw the garden gate move, slow and deliberate. Someone was coming in. George was nowhere in sight. Eleanor was in the library, her shadow dancing against the curtains. I slipped into my slippers and crept downstairs. The roses swayed in the wind as I stepped outside. The air smelled of rain and soil. And there, standing beside the marble bench, was a man, mud-streaked, unshaven, clutching something wrapped in plastic. He froze when he saw me. "You're Mary, right?" he whispered. My pulse quickened. "Who are you?" He looked back toward the mansion, voice low and urgent. "My name's Daniel. I worked here, groundskeeper, 2 years ago." 2 years. That was around the time Margaret Keene disappeared. "You shouldn't be here," I said, glancing toward the house. "Neither should you. Not if she's found another one." His words made my skin crawl. Another what? Daniel stepped closer. In his hands was a small flash drive sealed inside the plastic. "Proof," he said, "of what happened. Cameras, recordings. She keeps everything." He pressed the drive into my palm. "Hide this. Don't let her see." From inside the mansion came the faint echo of Eleanor's voice, calling my name. Warm and melodic, terrifying in its calm. "Mary? Where are you, dear?" Daniel's eyes widened. "I can't be here when she finds out. She thinks everyone who leaves her is ungrateful." He turned toward the gate. "If you want to live, get out before sunrise." Then he was gone, vanishing through the iron bars like a shadow swallowed by the trees. I clutched the flash drive, heart pounding. When I stepped back inside, Eleanor was waiting in the hall, her expression perfectly composed. "You wandered off again. The garden can be dangerous at night." My voice trembled. "There was a man out there." Her smile didn't fade. "Daniel?" she asked softly. "Poor soul. He ran away once, never quite recovered. He says terrible things when he's frightened." She reached out, touching my shoulder. "You shouldn't listen to ghosts from my past, Mary." But her eyes betrayed something. Just for a second, a flicker of fear. That night, I locked my door and plugged the flash drive into the tablet Eleanor had given me. At first, only static. Then, video. A dimly lit room. The basement. Margaret Keene sitting in front of the camera, tear-streaked. "If anyone sees this, please don't believe her. She doesn't save people. She keeps them." The screen went black. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the tablet. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. Inside, the floorboards creaked. And from somewhere down the hall came the soft, rhythmic sound of wheels turning toward my door. I thought I could hide the flash drive, but when I woke the next morning, it was gone. And so was Eleanor Riley. Morning light crept across the floorboards, warm and ordinary, until I realized something was wrong. The chair by my bed was empty, the tablet was gone, and the drawer where I'd hidden the flash drive was open. For a few seconds, I just stared, trying to make sense of it. Then the chill hit me. Someone had been in my room while I slept. I hurried into the hallway. No sign of Carla, no hum of Eleanor's wheelchair, no scent of her rose perfume lingering in the air. The house felt deserted. Downstairs, breakfast sat untouched on the dining table, still steaming as if prepared for someone who never came. A single cup of tea, perfectly poured. Beside it, an envelope with my name written in careful script. I tore it open. Inside was one sentence, handwritten in blue ink. Some lessons can't be taught while I'm here. E.R. My stomach tightened. She was gone, but where? Footsteps echoed behind me. George appeared, pale and exhausted. His tie hung loose, his eyes rimmed red. "Where is she?" I demanded. He rubbed a hand over his face. "She left before dawn, said she had business to finish." "Business?" I asked. "The same kind she always has," he said quietly. "Tying up loose ends." He wouldn't look at me, and that frightened me more than anything he said. "George," I whispered, "did she take the flash drive?" He hesitated. "She doesn't like evidence lying around." I felt my pulse hammering in my throat. "You have to help me leave, now." He shook his head. "The gates are locked until she returns, and if she meant for you to stay, no one opens them without her permission." I stepped back, dizzy. "So I'm trapped?" "No," he said softly. "Protected." The word protected, again, always twisted into something that meant the opposite. That afternoon, the mansion grew silent again. Carla avoided me entirely. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. I wandered into the library, searching for any clues she might have left. In the corner, behind the heavy curtains, I found a small locked box. The key was still in the drawer. Inside were photographs, new ones. My face. Me at the dining table, in the garden, standing by the gate. Dozens of them. And beneath them, a single newspaper clipping. "Missing woman found safe after family dispute." The photo was me, standing next to Eleanor Riley, smiling. But I had never taken that picture. My breath caught. She'd staged it. She'd built an entire story around me before I even knew her plan. Suddenly, the phone on the desk rang. A landline, one I hadn't heard before. I lifted the receiver slowly. A woman's voice, calm and familiar, whispered, "I told you, Mary. Safety comes with rules." Then the line went dead. That night, the mansion's lights flickered out, and in the dark, I realized I wasn't alone. Someone was still in the house, watching me breathe. The power went out just after midnight. 1 second, the chandelier glowed soft gold. The next, total darkness. The mansion groaned in the wind, and for the first time, I could hear how old it really was. The walls shifted, wood creaked, air hissed through hidden vents. I grabbed the small flashlight from the bedside drawer and stepped into the hallway. The beam cut through the black like a knife. Dust shimmered in the air. Then I saw it, a faint shadow moving at the far end of the corridor. Not a trick of light, a figure. "Carla?" I whispered. No answer. I moved closer, each step measured. The light flickered across the wallpaper, and then I saw it clearly. A man. George. He was standing completely still, facing my door, like he'd been there for hours. "George, what are you doing?"
He didn't move, didn't blink. Then, finally, his voice came, low, strained. "She's coming back." "Eleanor?" He nodded slowly. "She doesn't like when people try to leave." My stomach turned cold. "Where's she now?" "Finishing what she started," he said. "She always finishes." He stepped closer, his face pale in the flashlight beam. "You have to go before she finds out what you know." "The gates are locked," I reminded him. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small brass key. "Not all of them." I cook it, my hand shaking. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I helped her before," he said softly, "and I couldn't stop her then." Before I could ask more, the sound hit, a sharp electronic click. The security cameras turned back on, red lights blinking to life along the hallway. George's expression darkened. "She's here." I ran toward the staircase. The flashlight beam jumped wildly as my feet hit the marble steps. The front door was only a few meters away. Then suddenly, it slammed shut. All at once, the lights snapped back on. Elamar sat in her wheelchair at the bottom of the stairs, perfectly still, her silver cross gleaming in the light. "Mary, why do you keep running from the people who care about you?" I froze. The key was still clutched in my palm. "You lied to me. You're not helping anyone. You're trapping them." Her lips curved faintly. "Do you think the world outside won't? Do you really believe your son would protect you now?" I backed up a step. "You can't keep me here." "Can't I?" she whispered. "You're safer here than anywhere else. Ask Margaret. Ask Ethan." The way she said their names, almost lovingly, made my blood run cold. I turned to run, but George grabbed my arm. "Go," he hissed. "Now." Behind us, Eleanor's voice rose sharp and commanding. "George, don't." I didn't look back. I sprinted down the hall toward the service exit, the one he told me about, and fumbled with the brass key in the lock. It turned. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. Freedom. Almost. Just as I stepped into the night, a scream echoed from inside, and when I turned back, I saw George collapse to the floor, with Eleanor smiling above him. George's scream split the night. I turned back just long enough to see him collapse, one hand still reaching toward me, eyes wide in shock. Eleanor sat in her chair at the top of the hall, perfectly still, the faintest smile on her lips. "Go," he rasped. "Don't let her—" The rest drowned beneath the sound of thunder and the hiss of rain. I ran, out the door, down the gravel path, my feet slipping, the brass key still clenched in my hand like a weapon. Behind me, the mansion glowed through the storm, every window alive with light, every shadow moving. For a moment, I thought I heard her voice carried on the wind, soft, calm, almost tender. "You'll come back, Mary. They always come back." I didn't stop until I reached the road. Headlights cut through the rain, an old pickup slowing beside me. A man leaned out, confusion and concern written all over his face. "Ma'am, you okay?" I could barely speak. "Please, just drive." We rode in silence until the house disappeared behind the trees. Only then did I start to breathe again. At the nearest town, I went straight to the police station. Detective Hale was there. His eyes widened the moment he saw me. "Mrs. Almond, my God, we thought—" I cut him off. "Eleanor Riley. She killed George. Maybe others." He grabbed his coat. "Show me where." By the time we reached the estate, dawn was breaking. Mist hung low over the gardens. But the gates were wide open now. The roses trampled. The mansion empty.
Inside, the rooms looked stripped bare as if the house itself had exhaled its last breath. No Eleanor, no Carla, no George. Just silence. Then Hale found it, on the marble bench in the memorial garden, Eleanor's silver cross. And beside it, a small envelope addressed in her neat handwriting, "For Mary." Hand shaking, I opened it. Inside was a single flash drive, not the one Daniel gave me, a new one. On it, a video. Eleanor, filmed in her study, eyes calm, voice steady. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone. Maybe by choice, maybe not. But remember this, Mary. Monsters are born when justice is denied too many times. You can destroy what I built or continue it. The choice is yours." The screen went black. Hale muttered, "We'll issue a statewide alert." But I barely heard him. My gaze lingered on that silver cross glinting in the morning light. Weeks passed. Investigations, reports, nothing conclusive. Eleanor Riley vanished without a trace. Sometimes I still dream of her voice, soft and certain. Safety comes with rules. The police never found the bodies she hinted at, or the network she had built. But every so often, another envelope arrives at my door, anonymous, sealed with wax, containing evidence against people who hurt the helpless. I don't know who sends them. Maybe the ghost of Eleanor? Maybe the part of me that finally understood her. Either way, I keep every one. Because sometimes justice doesn't come from angels. It comes from survivors. So what do you think? Was Eleanor Riley a monster or a savior with blood on her hands? Let me know in the comments. And remember, sometimes the people who save you are the ones you should fear most.